Second up, father loses custody of transgender daughter. That's right, I was going to talk to you about Robert Hoogland, a Canadian father, and his travails with the education system, the health system, the legal system, which ultimately have seen him wind up in jail for not accepting his child's gender transition from female to male. Now, wherever we find these family law cases, I want to make this proviso. It's never clean cut. It's never straightforward. It's as messy as it gets. It's family law. I'm not here to say who's been perfect and blameless. I'm not here to say who's evil and who's good. I'm not going to pretend that it's been clear and clean cut. I'm sure it hasn't. I'm sure it could have been better at every turn. However, there are underlying issues here in this case which are not going away anytime soon and which we must understand because they are spreading across the Western world. Mr. Hoogland's child was a biological girl. She's born in 2004. She started identifying as a boy at the tender age of 11. Hormone therapy was commenced in 2018 when the child was 14. Mr. Hoogland has tried to stop this from happening at every stage, but he has been thwarted by the courts every single time, and this has led him to talking publicly about his case in defiance of court orders, which has ultimately put him in jail as of March 2021. When she was in the 7th grade, Mr. Hoogland's daughter told a school counsellor that she identified as a boy, and it is alleged that this followed the teaching of a gender curriculum in the school called SOGI 123 and watching a film about gender fluidity. And the school helped her to pick out a male name, treated her as a boy as part of one of those so-called social transitions, change uniform, change bathroom, change pronoun, etc. And she was referred to as a boy by parents, peers and teachers. Multiple sources indicate that this was done without informing the parents. Now, before you take a sharp intake of breath, all these possibilities exist in schools in Australia right now, and indeed in most Western countries. Schools are allowed to do this. School counsellors are a thing. Gender curriculum are in all government schools. I've been pointing this out for some time now. This is wholly possible in Australia. Indeed, there are cases a little bit like this or that have shades of this already in Australia and other Western countries. So we must understand that. Her school recommended that she see a psychologist who treats children with gender dysphoria, and the psychologist in question was the author of a transgender children's book. So we know where this is going, and that psychologist referred her to a gender clinic at a children's hospital. And for those who follow these matters, you know that once you're in the gender clinic, it's very unlikely you're going to go back. Because indeed the Tavistock case out of the United Kingdom High Court found that once kids get to the clinic, it's exceedingly rare for them to be turned away. They usually go on puberty blockers, which is an all but a guarantee of irreversible hormone therapy. So there you go. On the 14th of August 2018, the clinic recommended hormone therapy as being in this child's best interests. The child and her mother signed a consent form for testosterone treatments, and 5 days later, Mr. Hoogland decided that he would email the gender clinic because he found out about it, saying that he did not consent to the treatment. Now, it's important to note that as part of the custody agreement between Mr. Hoogland and his ex-wife, they had joint authority over matters of medical treatment, etc. The agreement actually said that they had joint authority, or each had joint authority over giving, refusing, or withdrawing consent to medical, dental, and other health-related treatments. So the court had ordered that this was part of his purview, okay? So on 1st of December 2018, the clinic wrote to Mr. Hoogland to let him know that his consent was not actually required, but his refusal to give that consent was immaterial because his daughter, at the tender age of 14, was competent to consent to her own irreversible hormone treatment. Now, that fact that she was competent was subsequently confirmed by a court order. We're talking about a 14-year-old here, can't even give consent to getting a tattoo under law, it's not lawful, who probably doesn't even have control over her own bedtime, who can't go out at night, can't drink, can't smoke, can't do anything autonomously, but can make a decision like this. Now, the first major pushback we've had on this fact was from the Tavistock case out of the United Kingdom High Court. You can search my video that I did on that where I unpack it. And the Tavistock case, the judges actually ruled that a child of this age simply is exceedingly unlikely, which is as strong legal speak as you get, to be able to consent to such a treatment, to understand the implications of infertility and all these kinds of things. It's just not possible. But of course, that doesn't apply to this context in Canada. So Dad is cut out for good. He has no right to medical information and he has no say over consent. Now, the Supreme Court proceedings which followed made the whole situation probably worse, if anything. He lost, and the Supreme Court confirmed it was in the best interest of his daughter to get on with the treatment without delay. And they criticised Mr. Hoogland for playing some games with the timing of court applications and that to try and drag things out. It's kind of hard to blame him, although he probably shouldn't have done that. But here's the kicker. The court further ordered, 1, it is in the best interest of his daughter to be referred to as a male and to be identified by a male name. The court ordered that. Secondly, it will be considered family violence under the Family Law Act to attempt to persuade her to abandon her treatment, or to address her by her birth name, or to refer to her as a girl, either directly or indirectly, or to third parties. Wow, that will be considered family violence. So a further court order was made to restrain Hoagland from trying to persuade his daughter to stop her treatment and also to stop him referring to her by her birth name and gender, to basically double down on that court order because he had gone out into public and kept calling her she and had tried to persuade her not to go ahead with it. And they said, well, okay, we're going to make another court order to stop you from continuing to do that. And then there was another court order which prohibited him from sharing any information at all about her medical treatment, including the name of doctors or the status of medical therapies and so forth. So now the whole thing is being done in the shroud of secrecy. The judge also said that Mr. Hoagland had committed family violence by giving media interviews referring to his daughter as a she and by the birth name. Mr. Hoagland appealed that, and the appeal court basically didn't change anything. They downgraded it from family violence, but they doubled down on the orders against him. Here's a quote from the Court of Appeal. In general, caution should be exercised in limiting a parent's discretion, guided by their own opinion and belief, to parent as they see fit. However, as we have noted, this is a unique case that involves a father's disagreement about what is in his child's best interest in relation to the child's identity, gender, and medical treatment for which the child has validly consented. So it comes down to the fact that she had validly consented because she was able to consent to her own treatment, even though she can't consent to pretty much anything else. The father's refusal to respect his child's decisions regarding his gender identity is troublesome. His is the child. The evidence shows that his rejection of the child's identity has caused the child significant pain and has resulted in a rupture of what both parties refer to as an otherwise loving parent-child relationship. This rupture is not in the child's best interests. He clearly wants and needs acceptance and support from the father. So the court's saying you need to accept this. You must. There's no other way around. Now, Mr. Hoagland has actually continued to speak publicly about his case, and in those public forums he has continued to refer to his child as his daughter. Result? Well, it's convoluted legally, but he is in jail as of March the 16th, and he's in jail for a criminal trial that will commence in April, and he may be imprisoned for up to 5 years. Let me finish by making this reasonably lengthy but important quote from Mr. Hoagland in his own words. So enough of me talking about him, let's hear from him. He says, I'm thinking about these doctors. Here I am facing time in prison, and these two doctors who are so proud of the work that they're doing in transitioning children are actually cowards hiding behind children. They are continuing to commit what I consider crimes against humanity, and they are using the government to silence me so that I can't call them out on this. If they are so proud of it, why are they hiding? Why don't they come out and tell everybody how great it is what they're doing? This is the fact that he's legally not allowed to say who they are or what they're up to, okay? This speaks volumes as to what they're trying to cover up. They don't want you to know what they're doing with your children. And by disguising it as policy, they don't have to tell parents what's going on with it. What they will tell you is that it is used to protect children from their parents. How insane is that? Because they are saying parents are biased, parents will discriminate, parents will do all these terrible things because they don't agree that their child who is a girl is really a boy. So we need to protect these children from their parents. They're taking kids during school time out to get hormone shots. Parents don't know what's going on until it's too late. They're not even informing parents that their child is being transitioned anymore. Rapists get 2 years in prison. I'm looking at 5 years. Put that into perspective. That tells you how important this is to the government in their experimenting on children. But these kids are going to be handed a life sentence. It is irreversible, and it is, by the way. They will be sterile. They won't have families. A lot of them will eventually choose to commit suicide because they're compounding their mental health issues with this, and that is also true. They've been falsely told that they can change from a girl to a boy, which is impossible, and now they're somewhere in the middle. So my 5 years is nothing compared to the prison these kids are being put in for the rest of their lives. There's that moment when a court tells the parent who's against this that their child's going to be given cross-sex hormones regardless of what they want. And that moment is such a defeating moment because you know that your child is now going to be irreversibly damaged. And to sit and watch that happen, knowing it was completely avoidable, is the worst feeling for a parent. A lot of people are still in denial about all this. They'll hear my story and say, Rob must be exaggerating. It can't be like that. This is Canada. There's no way that this could be happening. Do you know, well, let me close with this actually. That's from the father. I think that's all just bang on the money. And that is what's happening. Gender dysphoria is a body dysmorphic condition. That's not a controversial thing to say, it is. Another body dysmorphic condition is anorexia nervosa. That is, a person's mindset is not aligned with their physical body. And this madness is as mad as a 14-year-old girl with anorexia nervosa going into a doctor and then being called competent to consent to her own liposuction to bring her body into alignment with her mind, and then getting court orders to make it a crime for her parents to talk about what the doctor is doing, or discourage their daughter from undergoing the procedure, or telling their daughter that she is not fat, or referring to their daughter as anything other than obese, or speaking publicly about the matter. That's what's happening here. That's what's happening. Rod Dreher, in his book, Live Not by Lies, he says the West is facing a crisis of therapeutic totalitarianism. Total power being exercised over every sphere of life, even the family and the church in other legislation. I'll get to that later in this episode. Total power being exercised in the name of what? Wellness, safety, well-being. That's the justification here. The best interests of this child. Well, I'll tell you what, the best interests of this child are far better understood by its parents than by the state, and that is nearly always true. This is, I agree with Robert Hoogland, this is a humanitarian crisis. This is happening in our midst with 1,000, 2,000% increases in children on things like hormone therapies in our nations. This is the great crisis unfolding before us, and we can barely find a politician to fight it. I tell you what, we need to stand up on this. I will keep talking about it. People say I get obsessed. Well, you know what? This is a humanitarian crisis. It demands our urgent action. And if not the Christians, then who? I think this is up to us. Hey, thank you so much for watching. If you liked what you saw, then make sure to hit the like button. If you want to never miss another video again, make sure to subscribe, or you can right now watch more videos right here. Cheers.